All right, what up, guys? Welcome back to A&A Productions. Sorry it's been a long time, but we're finally back making some more podcast videos for you guys.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about what's coming up in college football and the NFL. It's a perfect time to get into it, um, but I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump in with what's going tonight. We have Colorado and Washington State. Those teams are kind of at the bottom of the Pac-12 right now. Washington State started out pretty good, but they haven't been doing good recently.
Yeah, these are two teams that had a lot of high praise to them before the season started and now are really underperforming, and they both might not even make a bowl game now.
Yeah, I think that Dion and the Colorado team was a huge subject after the third week of the season when they were still undefeated. And, they had game day there. They had all the rappers posting about them. Everyone was talking about them. And I think that just shows that how ridiculous the hype was. He wasn't going to live up to it in the first season. And I think it was a little bit too much. They haven't won they've won one Pac-12 game on the road against Arizona State. But other than that, they've been pretty bad. I mean, they got killed by Oregon. They got killed by USC. Um, I think
Yeah,
that
I
just
mean,
shows that Dion got the skill positions, but for them to compete coming into the Big 12, they're going to have to get the offensive line and defensive line going as well.
yeah, and just to see them lose to like teams like Stanford as well is just like unacceptable. Honestly, for their talent base, I know for what they have for the skill positions, but yeah, their offensive line and defensive line have really struggled this year. Their defensive line is like bottom third in pressures, and then their offensive line has given up the most sacks and FBS this year.
Yeah, not good. They have many ways they can improve. Let's move forward into some of the big games we have tomorrow. I think the first one that I want to talk about is I think it's definitely the biggest game is it's at Oregon State and they're playing Washington, who arguably has the Heisman winner. It'll be close, but it's either going to probably be him, Bo Nix, are probably the two favorites right now. And Oregon State, I think they're favored for a reason. It's minus 1.5 for Oregon State right now. It was minus 2.5 earlier this week. But they have a really good offensive line, arguably the best one in college football. Their defense isn't bad, and DJ's actually been playing, pretty decent. So I think that them moving up in the rankings just shows how good of a season they've had.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really interesting game tomorrow. Like top 10 matchup, Washington undefeated, fighting for arguably a playoff spot. But yeah, it's at Oregon State. I could easily see Oregon State winning this game tomorrow as well. Be a big upset right before the Pac-12 championship game. 2 weeks left of the season. I mean, if Washington drops this one, I don't know. That'll shape up the Pac-12. Really, it'll make it really interesting because you'll have Oregon State, Washington, and then Oregon all at one loss in the Pac-12. If Oregon State would come away with this win.
Yeah, and that would really hurt Oregon's chances of making the playoffs too, because if Washington, isn't ranked third, fourth, or fifth in the nation in that Pac-12 championship game, that makes their conference not as tough. Um, Oregon State actually has the opportunity to do like one of the funniest things this year is, them and Washington State getting left out of the new conferences. If they beat Washington and then they beat Oregon too, and end both of those teams' playoff hopes in the last 2 weeks, I think that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah,
But Michael Penix in that offense, they're really good. I like all the weapons they have around them. Jalen McMillan, Romeo Odunze. Their offensive line's been playing good. He hasn't been getting sacked hardly. Um, I think that this is going to be a close game, but I think that Washington has shown their ability that their offense is going to score a lot of points in these close games. They did against Oregon. They 2 plays from the 50-yard line won the game. USC's
yep.
defense isn't very good, but they put a lot of points on them too. I think the only game that Penix has been questionable was after the Oregon game. There was maybe some hangover when he threw 2 picks against Arizona State, who's just not very good. But I'm still going to go with one of my locks this week for gambling is going to be Washington money line, even though they're on the road.
Yeah, I like that too. What game do you want to go into next?
Sure. So I guess we could keep it at the Pac-12 right now. Utah on the road against Arizona. This is another game that Vegas is thinking is gonna be pretty close. They have Arizona -1 at home.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really close game. I don't know. Utah's interesting. They have a really good defense, but they pretty much have no offense as their starting quarterback is still hurt from the ACL injury he suffered last year, which is kind of disappointing still because Utah could have been a really good team, probably could have been top 10 if they had their quarterback, but just some struggles on offense have lost them some key games that they could have won if they had a little offense. But Arizona is also another interesting team. Surprised they're ranked, but last week they almost lost to Colorado. But Colorado, as we've seen, can't seem to find a way to close out games lately. But I'm going to take Utah just in this one. I think Utah's defense is going to shut down Arizona. Arizona's not that special of a team. They don't have the best offense or that good of a defense. I just think Utah's defense will overwhelm Arizona's offense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I took that as one of my locks too, is Utah money line, even though they're on the road as well. But Arizona has a more athletic, mobile style quarterback, and I think that Utah has the ability to shut that down. Like you said, they have a really good defense. They're well coached. They've won the Pac-12 two times in a row. I think that they're built to win a game like this, even though that they've had to go with Bryson Barnes. And it'll be interesting to see. That's another subject of he's going to get a medical red shirt this year.
Mm-hmm.
If he decides to stay or transfer, it's kind of interesting to see what some of these quarterbacks end up doing.
Yeah. What game do you want to go to now?
Sure, we can go to. I'm trying to think. Let's start talking about some SEC. We'll go. Georgia at Tennessee. Let's talk about that one.
Georgia at Tennessee. That'll be a pretty good matchup. I think it'll be a close game in the first half, but I think Georgia runs away with it in the second half, like they pretty much have done in almost every game this year. Keep it close at halftime, and then they find a way to just step up and play better football in the second half and win games. They've had some close ones, but not really lately. They've been dominating a lot these last few weeks. And last week they played a pretty good Missouri team and kept it close. And then fourth quarter they dominated and won that game pretty good last week. But I just think Tennessee's been really disappointing. A lot of people thought Milton was going to be just as good as Hooker was last year and help Tennessee make the playoffs as they had hopes for last year. But Milton has just he's played good some games, but he's had some bad mistakes and in some key games that they just do not look good, especially the game versus Alabama. They did not look good at all.
Yeah, and Missouri whooped them too last week. That wasn't very good. The thing is about this game is I think it's not a question whether Georgia's going to win or not. It's more about how much, and that's what's kind of tough about betting them is, a lot of these games it'll take Carson Beck and that offense a while to get rolling. And, it's -10.5 right now, which I really don't like. It being, kind of wrapping up SEC play. I think that it's a question whether Joe Milton will have a decent game or he'll play poorly. I think this is a harder one to bet with the wider spread. So I'm personally not touching this one. But I think Georgia definitely gets the win. I don't think there's a question there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there.
And then for our next game, let's go into a Big 12 game. This is Kansas State at KU. KU, Jason Bean will probably play. It's still in the air, but their third string played and they lost to Texas Tech this past weekend.
Yeah, if Jason Bean's playing, this could be a very close game. KU has actually really surprised me this year. Their offense looks pretty good, but their defense has had some struggles as well. But yeah, this is in the CFP rankings, they're both ranked, so this is going to be the first time K-State versus KU has been ranked in I don't even know how many years. But that's exciting. Both 7-3, both bowl eligible. This is the first year where things could be close, but I don't know. K-State's been rolling lately. I do believe they should have beat Texas at Texas, but we'll go besides that. But the line here is interesting. 10.5 for K-State. Who knows? It could be close or it could be a blowout. I don't know. This is an interesting one to me.
Yeah, I try not to bet on my favorite team, so I'm not going to touch that one. But if I was thinking about betting it, it's kind of tough because you don't know really how bad the Jason Bean injury might be. Like he could come in and still play decent, or
Yeah.
if their third stringers in, I think it's pretty good. I would take it. But I think something else is with K-State is they play really good in games that they're supposed to win, like their favorite, other than Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
They're favored by 11 points, but at the time, no one knew that Oklahoma State was decent because they had been playing three quarterbacks, and then they finally went with Allen Robinson, or Allen Bowman, sorry. But the thing about K-State is if you look at their games in Big 12 play, they're beating these teams like 41-0. They won another game like 38-3.
Last week they won 59-25 against Baylor.
Yeah, and the other teams they beat, it's not like they were ranked or anything special either. Houston is not that great,
Yeah.
but
They had Texas. They had Texas into overtime. They only lose by 3, but in that game, I just think some dumb calls in overtime lose them the game. Not really much on the players there, but
yeah. But this K-State coaching staff has a habit of getting outcoached in big games and then winning big in games that we're supposed to win. So I think we'll take care of business, even though it's on the road against KU. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I think if it's the third stringer, the game won't be close. If Jason Bean's in, that spread might be something to watch. But I think this will be K-State's. I think they haven't lost this game since 2009 was the last time.
Yeah, 2009 when KU made the Orange Bowl.
Yeah. So
But
it's a lot of wins in a row for K-State if that happens.
yeah, I think K-State will come out with the win in this one. The third stringer plays. It's not going to be close. Jason Bean plays. It'll be close up until about the fourth quarter because the crowd in Lawrence will be a little rowdy that first half, and then K-State will start rolling in the second half is what I'm thinking, and the game will just get out of hand at that point.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, we're going to talk about another game. Let's do Texas at Iowa State. So Texas is a team that still has playoff hopes. They're on the road at Ames. It's a night game, number 7 in the nation. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking Iowa State has played well in Big 12 play, but I just don't think Iowa State's that good of a football team. They really haven't played much, though, in Big 12, and I think this is their first true test, and Texas is just going to be too much for them, especially with Quinn Ewers back playing this week. I think Texas rolls, and that line at 7.5, I feel Texas is easily going to clear.
Yeah, man, I would agree with you, but another thing is Texas will get up big going into the first half. I think if I'm betting this game, I'd take Texas first half spread because what they have a tendency to do is get up big in these games, and they just let them right back in. Even with, Quinn Ewers had a game like that as well. So I think that Texas is going to win this game, no doubt about it. But if I was a Texas fan, I still don't like how all these games are closer than what they need to be. It would be nice if Texas could just win the entire game, win every quarter. A win's a win. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But I think that spread might be something that's kind of tough. But I think that now we've kind of talked about every big game. I think what I'd like to transition into is kind of talking about the college football playoff rankings and who we
Yeah.
think is going to make it. So I'll kind of just brief it real quick. I think there's 7 teams that are still in the mix. I'd say Georgia number 1. I'm just going off how they are right now. It's Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, right? Ohio State number 3, or is it the other way around?
Ohio State's 2,
Ohio
Michigan's
State
3.
2, Michigan 3. 4 is Florida State. 5 is Washington. 6 is it
Oregon.
Oregon? No, 6 is Oregon. 7
Yeah,
is Texas,
Texas.
and then
8
8 is
Bama.
Bama. So I'll say there's 8 teams. I think
I
the
think
8
those
teams.
8 teams, because next you get down to Missouri at 9 and Louisville at 10, which Missouri's lost 2 games. They're not going to get in. And Louisville's just strength of schedule just isn't that tough, even though they played well. But I think if they make the ACC championship, they'll run into Florida State and they'll lose that, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, I think those top 8 teams from Georgia to Alabama, though, they all are still fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I don't like the having the Big Ten so firmly at those 2 and 3 spots. They even had Ohio State at number 1, which wasn't really logical at all. I think the best team they'd beat was Penn State, who has a high school JV player at their quarterback position. And,
Penn State's had the same problem all year. They always start undefeated, look really good, and then they play some real comp, and they can barely even score 10 points.
Yeah, no,
Happens every year.
It's hard to tell. I think that there's 2 locks for the playoffs right now, and I think that's Georgia being number 1 and Florida State being number 2. I think Florida State will get in because if you look at their schedule, they're just going to coast. Even that ACC championship game, they'll play a Louisville team who I'm pretty sure got killed by like an unranked Pitt who's having a horrible season.
Yeah.
And
they barely won last week. They won in the last minute of the game last week against two-win Virginia.
Yeah, and Florida State, I mean, they already have the wins they need to get in, so they can just coast. And
Yep.
I think Georgia, it's likely that they win out as well. I think Alabama might give them a shot, but I think that just relies too heavily on Jalen Milroe to have a good game, which I think he's just been inconsistent. I mean, we saw I just don't know. It's a huge question mark with him if he's going to have a game where he just turns the ball over, if he's going to run around and make plays. So I'd say Georgia's a lock, and even if they lose, the committee's shown that they'll put 2 SEC teams in anyways. So,
Yeah, I think if Georgia, Alabama, SEC championship, if Alabama were to win that, I think Georgia makes it anyway. But then you got to argue, should Alabama make it if Georgia makes it? Which is where it gets tough because I don't know. Because if you put Alabama and Georgia in, Florida State obviously has to get in. And then you're debating on Ohio State, Michigan, or Washington or Oregon.
yeah, so Washington is actually another team. If they win out, they're getting in. So I think they're kind of in the same boat as Florida State because if they beat Oregon twice and they're undefeated, now also they have to take care of business on the road against Oregon State this week, which isn't going to be easy. But if they get these things done and they're undefeated, obviously they're getting in. And I think that would make it even tougher if, say, Georgia loses, because then you have Florida State undefeated, Washington undefeated, Alabama 1 loss, but they beat them. And then the 4th spot, it could be a Texas team with 1 loss, but their 1 loss
Against OU.
happened way back, and they actually beat Alabama, which is a huge win on the road. So I think that's when things get kind of complicated. So I think that if Georgia ends up losing to Bama, they need Oregon to lose, and they need Texas to lose as well to probably get in there.
Yeah, I think that too. Texas is interesting. If they win out, and they win the Big 12, it depends on who they play in the Big 12 championship, though. Like if they play OU and beat OU this time, I would say Texas has a real shot at making the CFP. But if they play like a team like Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship, who knows? It could go anywhere with Texas. And then Oregon and Washington, like that's really a tough decision there. Like obviously if Washington beats them, if Washington wins tonight, they make the Pac-12 championship, and Oregon makes the Pac-12 championship, and then Washington beats Oregon. Obviously, yes, Oregon's out, Washington's in. But if Oregon beats Washington in the Pac-12 championship, then you got who do we put in there? That'll be interesting. But I think for the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan State, whoever wins that next week is whoever loses that more per se is not making the CFP.
Yeah, no shot. If you look at the Big Ten this
It's
year,
just too stacked this year.
I mean,
Overall in
the
football.
bottom half of the conference is a meme. It's a joke. It's terrible.
Who's ever going to play in? I think it's the Big Ten West, like Nebraska and Minnesota. Minnesota's at the top, and they're a 4-loss team.
And Iowa's offensive coordinator
Iowa's
should be working at Burger King. I mean, that side of the Big Ten is just a joke.
Like you have Nebraska, who's third in the Big Ten West, which Nebraska is fighting for a bowl game.
Yeah, and they lost at the beginning of the year to teams that aren't all that. And I would like to make like one more point about the college football playoff. I think what's interesting with, say, the one-loss teams of Oregon, Texas, and Bama all went out. Obviously, Texas is going to get in over Bama, but I think there'd be some arguments over what team would be ranked higher, the one-loss Oregon team or the one-loss Texas team, because both would have one. Texas would have that win on the road against Bama, and then Oregon would have that loss in their final game against, or Oregon would have that win in their final game against Washington.
Yeah, I think this year is. I mean, I said this last year. I've been saying this for the last like 3 years that each year I feel like the college football playoff gets harder and harder to decide on who makes it. But I feel like this year is just really stacked with those top 8 teams. And I can't wait till 24 next year when they make that 12-team playoff.
Oh, this year shows how much we kind of need that.
Yeah.
Really, I think it should have been 8. I think those 8 through 12 teams will end up getting blown out, but I think that 4 might be a little bit too small because this year, there's not like usually this doesn't really happen. I actually think this year's been a lot different. Usually, even with the Heisman race, like it's kind of weak too. But usually there's like 2 teams that are clearly separate from the rest. Like usually it'll be like a Georgia and a Bama is obviously way better than everyone. And then there's like Ohio State that can come in and compete. Like usually it's like there's 2 teams that are way above, but this year it's like there's like 7 teams that all could play each other pretty closely.
I can't remember where we've gotten to about 2 weeks left in college football, and there's still 5 undefeated teams in the country at that top 5 spot fighting for a playoff spot.
I'll give my.
I would say my prediction would be Georgia number 1. I think Michigan will make it again this year. And then I'll have Florida State and Washington as my next 2 teams making it. But like I said, the Big Ten is weak this year. But I think you got to put an undefeated Michigan or Ohio State in over a one-loss Texas.
Football playoff, I agree. I think Georgia will be number 1. They're going to win out. Number 2 for me is going to be Florida State. I think they're a little underrated right now. They maybe have played some teams closer than they should have, but when they played, an SEC team at the beginning of the year, they handled business. I think they're just going to coast going forward. They don't play anyone really. I mean, they have to take care of business in a rivalry game, just like everyone else, to close out the year against a Graham Mertz-led Florida offense. And then in their championship game, I mean, they're not even going to be playing anyone that great. It's probably going to be Louisville, who got destroyed by a unranked Pittsburgh team who's having a horrible year. So I think Florida State will coast into that number 2 spot right behind them. And this could change as well, the order between 2 and 3, but I think Michigan will get in as well. I think Ohio State has shown that this is a tough game for them with Ryan Day. I think that he still needs to prove that he can win a game like this. On the road against Notre Dame, that shouldn't have been a 1-point final play win. I mean, that should have been a bigger win. And then Penn State isn't that great. Their quarterback sucks. Their offense is stagnant. Their defense isn't bad, but they don't have an offense to compete in those games. So that's not a huge win either. And then number 4, so between these one-loss teams with Oregon, Alabama, and Texas, Texas has the advantage over Alabama because they beat them on the road. But my thing is Washington, even if they win this week, they still have to beat Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship, and that's extremely hard to do in college football, is beat a team twice. I think Georgia gets it done because Jalen Milroe has been shown that you don't know how he's going to play in games like this, if he's going to turn the ball over or not. And but I do think that Oregon can win that Pac-12 championship game, and I think Washington could even. It wouldn't be surprising for them to lose at Oregon State. So for that number 4 spot, I'm going to go Texas. So I had Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Texas as my college football playoff.
All right. And yeah, I agree with you that Jalen Milroe and the Alabama, people are like, oh yeah, he's playing really well lately. Alabama looks like a good team. They could give Georgia a run for their money, but who have they played? No one, not really. I mean, yeah, you could make a case they played Tennessee, but Tennessee has not looked good this year at all. And that's just a team that has been really disappointing. And Milton just he's not the guy. I mean, they need to find their Tennessee over there has just struggled to find good quarterbacks. They have solid teams, but they struggle with the quarterback position.
Yeah, that Texas loss kills them. And I think Ole Miss was a good win for them.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin even said, even in the SEC with ranked teams, there's a huge difference between a team that has a recruiting class of 24 or 5-stars versus a team that gets 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
So I just think the talent gap between Georgia and Bama is so much greater than the rest of the SEC right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though some teams have gotten, Tennessee had a huge win last year, and that was crazy. But I would like to go in to cap college football off with some of my locks for the week. I'll give some locks, and then I'll give picks I'm confident in that could happen as well. So my first lock is going to be Duke -3.5 on the road against Virginia. I just don't think Virginia is a very good football team. They had one big game against North Carolina. I think Duke can handle business and win by 4 points. Another game I'm going with is I'm taking BYU +24.5 at home against OU. For OU to win by 25 on the road when they've shown a lot of inconsistency, I think is going to be pretty hard. I don't think they do it because ever since that Texas game, which I think it's a fair thing to say, they put everything into that. That was their Super Bowl. After that, I mean, they haven't even looked like a ranked team. They've just looked like whatever, they're average. I think BYU is going to not lose by 25 at home, so I like that pick. And then I also like Utah money line. We already talked about that at Arizona. I am going with Washington money line at Oregon State. That's a debate whether that's a locker or not, but I think that Michael Penix in that offense will get it done at the end of the game. And then another lock I have is UCF +2.5 at Texas Tech. Texas Tech has showed major inconsistency. I think right now the line is kind of in their favor because it is at home, and they just had a ranked win, but it was against a third-string quarterback. I'm going with Oklahoma State -6.5 at Houston. We all saw the horrible week they had. No one saw that coming. I think they bounced back from that. I have NC State +2.5 at Virginia Tech. I don't think Virginia Tech's a very good opponent either. Even though NC State's on the road, I think that their quarterback, being mobile as he is, can get it done. And then finally, I have Rice -2.5 at Charlotte. Charlotte has a lot of points, or has a lot of problems scoring the football. They've gotten shut out in games. I like Rice to handle business on the road. And then another question I guess we should probably talk about at the end here is the USC and UCLA game. USC's -6.5. I would go with it, but man, that defense has just been so horrible. They finally fired Alex Grinch, which I think was the right decision.
Yeah. I don't know. USC's just been another one of those teams that has been really disappointing. And their offense is really good, really talented. Caleb Williams, he's a really good quarterback. He's probably going to go top 3 in the draft. I don't know. It depends on which team gets the first overall pick, because I think one or two of those teams may not even pick a quarterback if they get the first overall pick. But USC's offense rolls every game. But I mean, it's hard to win games when your offense scores 40 plus points, but your defense gives up 50. So,
man, he should have been fired. He should have been
fired after the Colorado game.
I mean, he was the reason why at OU. I mean, who all Baker Mayfield had
they never had a
Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown.
OU never had a defense until he left.
I mean, that offense scored like 50 points against a good Georgia defense, and Alex Grinch should not have had a job. He finally got fired, but this should have happened a long time ago. And I think that's a good way to wrap up our college football talk.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up our college football talk today. Tomorrow we'll bring you with an NFL talk going into Sunday and Monday night. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We look forward to making some more videos coming up lately for you guys, and peace.